Sinead, welcome back to Hate Change Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I know it's been a couple of years.
It's been a few years. I was thinking about when last time was, and I remember recording from my kitchen table in San Francisco. So it must have been like 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and how the world has changed just a bit.
Oh, the world has changed. When you think back on that time, like pre-COVID era, I guess you can say, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I'd say the first, it's a really interesting thing to reflect on because I had been talking a lot about AI, trying to mobilize people. This thing is going to be a big deal, or things like remote work. And I think it actually gives me a little bit of peace that the future isn't as unpredictable as it may seem. And why that gives me peace is because if you can start to see different signals and data and understand trend lines of where things may go, you can prepare better. So when I think about 2018, trying to blog about AI and host those talks, we should pay attention, it's going to impact the workforce. And then those things started to transpire. And so, of course, you can't predict how quickly, you can't predict breakthroughs, you can't predict moments like ChatGPT, of course. But the future doesn't have to always be such as a surprise as we make it feel. And that's when I compared 2018 till 2026. Oh my goodness, this is where we are. That's, I think, what comes to mind.
You know, that makes me think of something I reflected on recently of how I relate to change. You know, when you step unknowingly onto a patch of ice, you're going to take a big dip. Like, you're going to fall and probably hurt yourself because you couldn't see it coming. But if you know the ice is there and you're like, oh, I still want to get across to the other side, if I take conscious, smart steps across this patch of ice, I will make it without falling. It's almost a similar thing where, like, if we just stay more conscious of the ever-changing environments and what's going on, it's not it's not like we'd never feel uncomfortable about it because the ice is still a little bit scary, right? But I can get across it without falling. Does that relate?
Yep, totally. And sometimes you can use the ice to your advantage, right? You can slide across it. You can go through the moment of turbulence a little bit faster if you lean into it. And it's the same thing. I mean, I guess we're both from countries where there can be a lot of ice. When you're driving, if you see the ice and get so scared that you brake, you're going to slide and spin out. But if you just release the gas and release the grip, and just maybe put your car into neutral if you're really driving through those Canadian roads, and just lean into that ice, you're not going to have this kind of startled, probably hitting a snowbank or something else. So I think that's when I reflect back on those years. And it does give me peace knowing that we can actually prepare for things we can't see.
But you're also saying that, yes, we can prepare for things we can't see, but in that preparedness, or that preparation rather, there is a little bit of surrendering, of just like trusting, like, okay, I see that we're moving into new territory and I want to stay aware of that so I'm not completely startled when it happens, but I also want to sort of surrender to like a state of neutral, like you said. It's not just about like forcing yourself through and needing to know every single step.
Yeah, totally. You do what you can. And that's, I'd say, surrendering is a really interesting word, especially when you relate it to technology. Because you want to be active, and it depends on what role you're in, right? So if you're in a policy role, please do not just surrender and just let the technology go. We've done that with social media. How are we all doing? Not super well. But at the same time, surrendering to the idea that technology has always changed. And if you reject that premise, you end up just not preparing for the future because you're denying that it's happening. And so I think, that's surrendering is an interesting word with technology.
And to your point, you started talking about this long before it became a thing, right? Like 2018. I didn't talk about AI yet. No one has used ChatGPT. What is it about the future and tech that's always fascinated you?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think if you look at history as the study of change, so is technology. And when you can understand how things can change, I mean, it's those light bulb moments for me. So I spend a lot of time in data, a lot of time researching patents, connecting really nerdy signals. And when you get those breakthrough moments, this is where we may be headed. And these are all the actions we can take today to either arrive at that future in a way that we feel a bit more in control of or not. That feels so exciting and empowering to me. And I think technology, I mean, it's brought us so much, good and bad, but it's just brought us so much. And so for me, I don't know. I think even if it's one of those roles that even if I wasn't going to get paid for it, I would still be doing this. And that's actually how I landed into it. I was doing it without, that being my career. It was being more of a hobby or a passion. And then it's like, well, if you wake up and talk about something every day, write about it every day, and you research it for yourself, that is a signal. Move in that direction.
And you better get paid for it.
At some point, if you can.
Yeah.
Attach an invoice to it.
Well, so let's talk about your background, because you have a very inspiring background story. You grew up in Canada. You went to school for economics, markets?
Finance and chemistry.
Oh, okay. Was that a conscious choice? Like, did you know that could have, eventually lead you to where you're doing now? Or was it more like, I have a sense that this is interesting? Like,
not at all. So I did finance because I loved numbers and math and thought it was pretty practical, and chemistry just because I loved chemistry. But at that point in time, I was looking at careers from the perspective of what existed that would maybe interest me. I never really thought, what are the things that I could maybe create? So I looked at careers as very linear. And so finance to me had a sequence of steps that I could follow and a career progression that I could understand. And that was more of the driving force. I didn't really think, how much do I like capital markets? Not much.
Right.
Girl, you weren't talking about capital markets at 17, 18, so why finance? But for me, I could understand the logic of the career in finance, and I knew I could apply analytics, and that was something that I loved. So no, I did not go into it with the intention of hopefully coming out at the other side, advising on technology. And it wasn't until I did my master's, again, still kind of searching. I feel like, Steve Jobs has that amazing quote, the dots only connect when you look backwards. And I found I was continuing to search because every role that I stepped into that wasn't aligned with the problems I actually wanted to solve never felt right. And I had the misconception that it was because I wasn't high up in the companies, I didn't have enough autonomy, so if I could strive further up some fake ladder, maybe I'll feel more empowered about the work that I'm doing. And that's not true, right? It doesn't matter how high up you are in a lane that doesn't inspire you, it will never feel right. So I kept trying to push forward. I did my MBA, in which I don't regret any of that. I learned so much, and that was actually where I took my first class on foresight, which is what I do now, and it was truly one of those aha moments. But it was once that voice became so loud, not only you're in the wrong lane, you're kind of in the wrong life. How you introduce yourself and the path you think you want to take in front of you is nothing at all about the person you want to be. And, I spent my whole life thinking about my career from what do you want to do? But I had never asked myself, but who do you want to be? And those are two entirely different questions, even though they seem really similar. So once I started to hear that voice, I couldn't deny it at all. Did go into management consulting for a bit, and then was scouted by a modeling agency. And I saw that as a window to a different life that I could create. It wasn't that I was scouted to be on the cover of Vogue and then it was all happening. It was, hey, you can maybe step into this world and go audition and see if you can become something of it. And I saw that as the window to a different opportunity, and so I leaped.
And we're going to get there in a second because it's fascinating. But just a reminder for people listening that it's so easy to feel like we invest into something, we choose a path and we pick this education, and now because of the investment, if that's time or money or both, it's almost like now we have to stick to this lane, and we kind of hear the voices of like, are you climbing up the right ladder? And like, what about when you get there, you're not happy, and do you continue to pursue because you chose this? Or is it more like everything, and it's not wasted, it's never wasted, right? Because you always get these little nuggets of information that you can act upon or not. And looking back, do you regret the choice of education?
Not at all. I think, all of the things that I've studied have been profoundly helpful in the work that I do today, even more so than how they were intended to be used in the jobs that I thought I was reaching for at the time. So I think it's all made sense now. And if you look at the fundamentals of business, if you do something that seems suddenly unrelated, so you've built this career in one lane and then you suddenly want to take a detour into something that's new, that's a unique intersection that only you can operate on. And that is the fundamentals of a competitive advantage. No one else can sit there but you. So that's going to be the thing that makes you unique on your next adventure. And we are more than one thing. So this idea that your resume has to be static when you continue to evolve, the logic of that doesn't make any sense. You can rewrite your resume as many times as you feel like you need to. If you're growing, then so should the things that you're applying your mind and your body to. And so once I had that opening, I started to look at things differently. But it is such a trap, right? We feel this is what some fake resume says. It has to make sense on this paper. But everything else is telling you to move in a different direction. And it's this conditioning that makes us feel like we shouldn't.
Right. And we can get back to this later, I'm sure we will, but this ability to trust our own path gets even more important in these days as AI is taking jobs and everything's shifting and there's no certainty. Like there's no certainty in a resume anyways, right? And I heard something silly where like now it's not about getting a promotion for promotion's sake because you get higher up and more responsibility and more pay. Like you just want to have the status of having a promotion. And what does that mean if nothing, right? Like just because you can put that on your LinkedIn, right?
Yep.
And so we're chasing the wrong metrics in a way. But let's get back to modeling because that's how we know each other from the modeling world here in New York City. You got scouted by New York Model Management? Or that we signed
Next.
with here? Next.
Yeah, Next in Canada.
Okay. So you enter the modeling industry, you gain a foot in the fashion industry, and you use that platform to then build out Way, which stands for Weekly Advice for the Young Entrepreneur. And you started hosting these events in the city, guiding young people on this, the future and what we should start looking at and be, prepared for. Do you feel, and we already kind of talked about it, but like having one foot in the fashion world and then one foot in your genuine interest in navigating this and your background in physics and economy, all of the things that we just, not the melting pot, but you're a beautiful mix of background. Do you feel like all of that built up to your positioning to kind of bridge the gap and maybe bring this message to a different audience?
I think so. I mean, I don't believe I would be doing anything that I'm doing today if I hadn't stepped into the world of fashion. Fashion forces you to recognize you are the brand, you are the message. So then it's what do you want to say? So sometimes you can do that by, you're on the cover of Vogue and you're expressing an identity of some brand or some designer, but you can also use yourself as the organization, as the brand to say any message. And so when I stepped into the world of fashion, that really empowered me. I don't think I would have been as vocal about many things in the world had I not first stepped into the lane of fashion. So for me, it was a ticket and an unlock to something inside of me that I didn't see before. And I think it stripped away the false comfort of a job title in a traditional sense. So I was no longer speaking about a topic on behalf of a company or on behalf of some false title on LinkedIn. I was speaking on it on behalf of me. So for me, fashion was really empowering. It also allowed me to talk about the things that I was interested in and realize there is a market for conversations about technology and understanding the future beyond the 9 people who happen to have a head start in it. And once I saw that, and realized everybody deserves to be invited to these conversations about their future and to have a stake in how these things are going to unfold, then I couldn't look back. So I think for me, fashion I had a really interesting relationship with that industry. And for me, it was a really big ticket.
And to your point, it was who you became. It was about becoming who you wanted to be and not needing to have a title like I do these things. And it opened up this whole scene of your, you could talk about anything because you're just curious. You want to learn and you want to share what you're learning with other people, right?
Yeah.
And you were so perfectly positioned for what came next that, speaking of the ice patch, some people could not ever foresee coming and we were so stuck in like, this is what it's always been. And then suddenly, boom, AI comes in and takes over big time. And people were desperately looking for someone to guide, to, have answers and someone who they can maybe relate to. So not, the CEO of the AI companies or the tech companies, but someone who's like, here's a person who I can relate to, both because she has an image that I aspire to, but also because she's a young woman and navigating the exact same things that I'm navigating. And actually, I need to brag because you're my friend and I'm going to take my paper out because there's so much to say about you. Since you last were on, and all this happened in the world, you have been featured in the New York Times, in Wired, and Vogue. You've been recognized as one of the top 50 voices shaping the future by Afrotech, one of the top 10 Black women changing the game by Refinery 29, The Globe and the Mail has featured you as a tech contributor discussing the intersection of business and emerging tech. You're also a repeating speaker at the UN. You have a huge following online, and it's always growing. You have your own show, I've Got Questions with Sinead Bovell, which anyone needs to subscribe to. And you're also a regular tech commentator for major broadcast networks, including CNN, NBC, CNBC, and CTV. Yes, applause, please. Like, this girl has taken the stage in her own image, and people want it because you have so much important things to say. You're so brilliant, you're so smart, and you're so relatable, and you shine every time I see you anywhere. You just such a light about you. As someone with this much pulse into the global AI scene of people's thoughts and feelings about it, the questions that keep coming up, what is that pulse right now? What are people thinking? What are people feeling? Where are we when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Yeah, and thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Where are we in this moment with artificial intelligence? I think the world has now awoken to the reality that we are at the beginning of another industrial revolution. So we kind of feel like the ground we knew is moving away. Something else is going to transform everything about how we live, how we work. All of the kind of static anchors of society suddenly feel like they're moving out from under us. On the one hand, there can feel like a lot of optimism and excitement. We're seeing different breakthroughs, and we're seeing the wonder and the futures that are worth fighting for. And then on the other side, there is this feeling of a little bit of a loss of control. And of course, it's all against the backdrop of AI isn't coming in a vacuum, right? It's on the backdrop of global affairs. It's on the backdrop of different economic conditions for people, different vulnerabilities. But I think we all know everything is about to change. There's just varying awareness of how much, when, for whom, and sometimes why. So I'd say that's where we are in this moment with artificial intelligence, and it's still so early. I think, I guess 3 years ago now, maybe almost 4, was the breakthrough in ChatGPT and generative AI, and this is a decades-long horizon. So we're like, the light bulb has been demonstrated, but it was 30 years after that people started to really put that thing in their homes. That's where we are with AI. We haven't really even experienced all of the ways it will change our life.
We're just seeing the top of the iceberg, so to speak.
Yeah,
kind of.
The top or the bottom.
The top or the bottom, yeah, how you think about it. I mean, I was reflecting on this myself earlier. And I think you've said this too, where, when the internet entered the stage, there was this like, it's gonna, the world's gonna go under and all these different things because this online whatever, and slowly we transitioned and it became a new norm. And of course today we take for granted that we can get online, and it wasn't even that long ago. I mean, I remember as a child you had to dial up and it took about 5 minutes. You had to listen to this tune, you knew it by heart, and then after 15 minutes your dad said, now we got to turn it off again because it's costing too much money, right? And now if I don't have service underground, I get frustrated. Yeah. So it's crazy how far we've come. I'm not old, we're like, it's a couple of decades away. So, and even with ChatGPT and AI, when it first came, you're like, wow, it's remarkable that I can put in a couple of words and they just spit out this information for me. And now it's like, of course I will, right? So how quickly we adapt to something. Is there a future where AI doesn't exist or it's inevitable?
I mean, of course, nothing is truly inevitable, but AI is one of those technologies where it isn't a transitional app or piece of software or a platform. It's a general purpose technology, just like electricity. So technically, no, this thing, I mean, we've been living with it for over a decade, and we just don't recognize that that's many aspects of our lives have already been built on top of this thing. But no, there isn't really a future where AI isn't a part of most aspects of our lives. Sure, we can all go to nature and do different things where there's no technology, but eventually it would be the same as, is there a world in which we can just not deal with electricity? And that's the path AI is on. And that's why I've even stopped. I don't even call it a tool if I'm in policy rooms or in rooms with big decision makers, because they need to see the magnitude of this. A tool is something that you maybe grab from the shelf to help you advance a certain task in front of you. Infrastructure is like concrete. And if you don't treat it that way, there will be cracks, or you will miss how much things are going to be unrecognizable, and think you can just bring in platforms or regulatory ideas from a century where this new technology is taking us somewhere else. So I think that's the scale of change that's coming. But again, as you mentioned with the internet, that was also general purpose technology, and we figured it out. There's also been chaos as a result of the internet, but we have gotten to the other side of people asking, what is this internet thing, which you saw on a lot of talk shows in the 90s. So we will get there. But yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
But I assume it's a time where we need to like hone in our skills on making decisions based on the future. We can't just say, oh, we know this from the past, because to your point, this is all about what's to come. And so we have to have some sort of like ability to learn from the emerging future as we're making decisions in the present moment.
Yeah, I think the past, because history is the study of change, and I think history, it's a good example of what not to do. So how are people left out? So when you look at the Industrial Revolution, which you can kind of compare similar aspects with AI, well, I'm sure we're all happy on the other side of this, that we can stream electricity and we're doing all these things and the steam engine happened, but people were just left totally exposed for 100 years to figure it out, and that's why there was so much chaos, so much upheaval. People were really vulnerable. So when you look back on that, those are things that we probably shouldn't repeat. And you can also look at the Industrial Revolution and think, what did we have to do to get through that? Well, we had to invent the modern education system we use today was an invention of the Industrial Revolution. We were moving towards a very different economy. We needed a very different type of knowledge to take us there. So it's interesting, we're at another one of Industrial Revolution moments. What should education look like? So I think when you look at history as frameworks, not necessarily a prescription for what to do next, but for how to avoid things that you don't want to repeat, I think it's really a good tool. And what happens if you also don't declare what you're trying to create? I think with AI, a lot of talk, which is so important, what are the scary things? What are we trying to avoid? What are the risks? How do we regulate? But what do you also want to build? Because someone's dream is getting built. And if your voice isn't in that, it's just not going to be yours. But someone's dream is guiding the ship. So the more we can lean in and identify, this is how this thing could work better for me or my community or my country, then you're directionally moving somewhere, not drifting and just floating based on someone else's vision of your future, which may or may not actually even contain you.
Okay, there's so much here. And I feel there's one thing I want to bring in right now, because as the climate optimist, there is an elephant in the room that needs to be discussed, which is the energy paradox of AI or the resource intensity of it all. And, you see numbers floating around, like prompting one paragraph or one email about 100 words. It's like drinking a bottle of water. And then the UN comes out and says we're in a water bankruptcy, meaning the earth is running out of its natural way to replenish fresh water. And you see huge data centers just, soaking up water. What do we make of those numbers?
I mean, I think we should be even louder about the impact of artificial intelligence on the planet, because some of it is actually just a choice that's being made to build AI in a certain way that doesn't have to be built in that way. So yes, I think, the latest number is around 100 words, around a water bottle of fresh water, and that also, of course, continues to change. That doesn't include how certain data centers are being powered. So some are using methane gas in Memphis. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. And yes, we are a water bankruptcy. I mean, by 2030, there's going to be a 40% gap in water demand versus water supply. And we've seen historically what happens when resources are strained, what that means for people and what that means for countries. So these are all things that we actively want to avoid. And then we have this technology that's supposed to change everything and be the greatest thing for the planet, at the same time moving us faster towards a planet that is unlivable. So for me, I think it's very frustrating that the choices being built around AI are making it feel like it is mutually exclusive. We get this technology and then we're going to have to sacrifice the planet temporarily, but eventually it's going to solve climate change. versus are there different ways we can build this technology so both can be true? The answer to that is yes, but the incentives behind AI, the incentives behind the private sector, and now largely the incentives behind government and national security are pointing us in a different direction, which is quite frustrating. But yeah, if somebody had to say, AI or the planet, I'm choosing the planet.
Right.
Because where are you placing AI if there isn't a planet? So
right.
that to me isn't making sense. It's almost like an oxymoron. And they aren't mutually exclusive. There is a world where it works.
Yeah, and it's the double-edged sword. Yes, it's energy and resource intensive, but AI is helping us see a lot of information and make sense of it in much quicker times. We can reach the solutions we need to get to much faster. We can cut out that dead time that we don't have right now. We can't afford to wait. If there's a solution to implement, let's do it. So AI is helping us.
Yeah.
And even just like optimizing energy grids, all these different things.
It's amazing for that. Even when we're trying to understand the coral reefs or how deforestation is happening, those are satellite imagery that AI then analyzes and can measure. This is how fast we're losing forests, or this is how water is changing, or this is what's happening with the coral reefs. So AI is involved in a lot of our understanding of climate, which is what also makes it so challenging and frustrating. And sure, yes, I mean, Google did a study maybe 2 years ago now, when you see those contrails of a plane. So when you look up and you see those beautiful things in the sky, I remember looking up at them and seeing them as a kid. Look, I wonder where those planes are going. Those are actually trapping heat in the planet. So we actually don't want to see those contrails. And so Google used their AI system to figure out, can planes fly at a different altitude or in a slightly different direction? And they were able to reduce those contrails by around 54%. And so that was just in their trial. So sure, AI applied in that way can absolutely be beneficial to gearing us away from some of these massive climate challenges. But it doesn't excuse the fact that there are different choices that can be made to prevent worsening climate change as we're also trying to solve it.
I am totally getting everything you're saying. It's not an either or. And it's a moment in time where we have a real ability to step in and participate in mapping out what this looks like and make sure that this is, you don't like to say tool, but an infrastructure of some sort that we want to be conscious about, that can help us and serve us, and that ultimately should give back more to us, right? It's not going to take away, but give us back the freedom that we actually have been chasing for a long time. And do you think that we might be missing learning from history because there is this chase right now? So many companies are like, if I don't get on board AI right now, if I don't invest right now, if I don't build the biggest whatever first, then I'm not going to be the winner in this next chapter. And because of it, we're overlooking smart choices in terms of energy and water usage and how we, fuel these centers. Do you feel like that urgency around it is sort of, taking us away from the smart, steady steps that we should be taking?
Yes. So I think the incentives of a system tell you everything about where it's headed. So I think it was Charlie Munger, the business guru, that said, show me the incentives and I'm going to show you the outcome. So yes, when you look at the private sector, their incentives are optimizing for Wall Street or for investors, not for people. And when you look at government, right now we're in a state where national security is what's guiding the ship. So a government is always probably going to choose national security over the planet, even though that's actually an oxymoron, because if you have a climate impacts military operations, it impacts everything about security as well. So it's super ironic. But it's still not entirely true about these race dynamics, because yes, there definitely is a technology race, particularly between, we'll say, the US and China are seen as competitors in this moment. But China is actually building AI in a different way. They're actually using a lot of nuclear and using a lot of solar. So some of it is the race, and some of it is the fact that in America, or more, we'll say, Western countries, or countries that are democracies, which is incredible and something we always want to hold on to, it can also incentivize short-term thinking. So if I am an elected official and I need to win something for the next year or 2 years, I'm going to choose the thing that is maybe cheapest or fastest, not the thing that over the long term may have these negative externalities. So we tend to suffer from short-termism in many ways. Our financial cycles are quarterly at the most, they're annual, and then we have our election cycles every 2 or 4 years, or depending on where you're from. So I think it's this short-sightedness that is keeping us trapped and inflaming the idea of urgency, build it now, build it in this way. So when you expand out the scope to who you're actually thinking you're racing against, and they're actually doing something very different. So the race logic, and that's why I also try to strategically change the language I use when I talk about AI and climate and incentives, depending on the room that I'm in. So if I'm in a room that believes it's national security or nothing, then I'm going to talk about energy security and how AI relates to that. And so if you want to have national security, you need to be energy secure. They are one and the same. And energy secure means you're decoupling from an oil market that's going to be dictated by perhaps an enemy or an adversary. So I'm using different language. Or if you want economic security, if you're really focused on capitalism and all of your companies winning, you want as cheap energy as you can get. The sun hasn't been sending us invoices unless I missed a meeting. So, and that's what different countries are recognizing and doing. So I try to strategically change the language to match the incentives in the room. And this is one of the few moments in history where the needs of the planet are also in line with the needs of the economy and also in line with the needs of security. So we can make a different choice.
It's all coming together. Whew. So as someone who has been a concerned citizen for the better part of my life, I've always tried to do the right thing and feel good about, how I show up and who I am. I can't help but compare this to but I'm recycling my yogurt container and I'm saying no to the plastic straw, but does it really matter? You look at the policies of things and you look at, oil executives not giving a damn. How should someone who's conscious about the planet think about AI? Because there is this level of my individual footprint. And sure, maybe I don't need to have AI or ChatGPT run through every email I send. I can be conscious of just how much I use it. Do I really have to, just for fun, sit at home and create an AI image, right? How should, does that matter in your opinion? How should we think about it? Because there is a lot of us, using it. And of course, it all matters to some degree. Every recycled container, unless it's a myth, gets recycled and not thrown in the trash. But there is also this level of but the bigger picture, let's be real.
Yeah. So the reality is not using AI in your own life or not understanding how to work with this technology on behalf of the planet. First of all, that isn't a fair trade-off to make that individual people should be making. You shouldn't have to lose out on preparing yourself for the next economy or the next way you're going to, build a life, and because you're trying to save the planet when the solution and the problem is structural, right? It's not really down to our individual usage. Yes, if you don't need to be streaming something on artificial intelligence, and there's many reasons why you don't want to turn to it for everything anyways, including protecting your own cognitive capabilities. Sure, so if you don't need to be using it, write that email if you can think more clearly, save time in a different way, and that does help in aggregate versus just sending, generating AI-generated images of yourself so you can see different hairstyles. But at the end of the day, I think we do deserve the productivity gains in our own life. We do deserve to be preparing for the workforce of the future and just to have fun with these technologies. So the problem shouldn't be put on us. It's kind of like asking the individual person to figure out, are cigarettes actually bad, and how should I? This is a structural problem. So it can't really fall on the individual. And if you are skipping out on AI entirely on behalf of the planet, you might actually be just impacting your own life more than the bigger cause or challenge that's ahead of us. So what we can do, though, how are we voting in a way that may incentivize a push towards a different way to build this technology? I mean, AI can factor into the ballot box, right? So how are you voting? How have the Congress people in your district, have they brought this up? If not, you can write to them. How are they incentivizing AI infrastructure in their location? And ironically, you can look at a state like Texas that has so much clean and green energy. Can we be building data centers in different places, right? So there are all of these different ways that we do have a bit more agency, and our voice does matter. And sure, yes, if you can avoid using AI for something that you don't really need it, even then it's actually just to protect your own brain and not get dependent on outsourcing everything to this thing. That's also helpful, but the problem is structural. It's bigger than us. And of course, sometimes money moves faster than policy. So if you feel like there's a company that's doing things differently, even if it's marginally, take your dollar, your time, and your attention to that company. And especially in this moment where AI companies are trying to get ahead and the race is so tight, they notice that drop. When a few 100,000 people go to a different platform, that's meaningful. So those are all the things that we do have control over. And I think we should be vocal about it.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense to me. And it's, I come back to this so much in my own climate work. The day I shifted from always trying to minimize my negative footprint, which is so disempowering and it's so draining and it's impossible, right? We can't do that we can't minimize ourselves completely anyways. Instead start focusing on how can I maximize my positive impact? How can I have a say in this? And to your point, like, be part of the dance, because if you're not, they're going to take it and run with it. And then you have no control in where this is going. So it's like, don't just step away. Don't see it as a demon, because there's so many possibilities to this, tool, this infrastructure, this next phase of our lives. And it's about, okay, the conscious steps into it, learning about it, getting curious about it, and then having a voice to say and knowledge about it when it comes to it. And sure, yes, protect yourself from always using it, because it can start draining your own, fluids or, juices. But that's such a good point. Thank you so much. One other big elephant in the room, which is people losing their jobs. And it's a big conversation right now. And something we should be concerned about. I mean, if you're someone who's just coming out of college and maybe invested into a career that may no longer be there, or you need to put food on the table for your family, which is most of us, how should we think about this? Like, are those numbers that people are, floating around real? Like, up to 50% can be gone in a few years. Like, what should we make of this?
Yeah, so AI, it is going to either completely transform a lot of jobs that we see today, and jobs that are pertaining to more knowledge work. So if you do something on a computer versus if you are in healthcare and you're a care aide and physically, helping people get in and out of the hospital bed or whatever it is. Yeah, so jobs that are contained within the more knowledge economy, and that can be creative jobs, that can be financial analysts, that can be your marketing person. Those are the jobs that companies are really building AI to optimize for. So we are looking at a pretty big disruption to the workforce. How quick? That's hard to say. I mean, you do have certain AI leaders say, all jobs are going to go away and eventually AI can do absolutely everything. But that's not necessarily how an economy works, right? When an important, powerful resource becomes abundant, the economy reconfigures around it in unpredictable ways. So we get the internet, and communication and distribution become abundant. And what happened? People started to make money doing things like filming a video in their car for 90 seconds. We got this huge thing called the creator economy. And all of these companies that popped up to support it, the YouTubes of the world, and then the creator agencies. Oh, and then we got this thing called the podcast industry. And by the way, that whole industry actually ended up threatening cable news. It became so significant. So the economy will reconfigure in very strange, unforeseeable ways. So we will do different things on the other side of that. Things that we today would not consider work, the way most of what you and I do, people probably wouldn't have called that work 100 years ago. They would have, are you kidding me? This is what you guys get to wake up and do? Yeah. And then you call this work? It will be something like that on the other side of it. The transition, I think, is what gets tricky. How do you prepare people? How do you skill people? How do you make sure people are economically supported if there is disruption? I think, my biggest advice is we are moving into an era where job titles are going to make less sense because AI will reshuffle some of the tasks within that job. So instead, we're going towards a skills market over the jobs market that we currently have. So when you think about what you do, remove the title, erase that job title. What are the skills that you perform in that role? And that is what you are bringing to this next era. And if there's things that you want to strengthen, critical thinking, judgment, discernment, knowing how to direct AI systems, those are all really, really important. But right now, as we're at the beginning of this new skills market, and that's how we have to be thinking about ourselves. We'll see a lot more entrepreneurship. And I mean, that's what a lot of people are already doing. You may have your main job and a side hustle, or you've already chosen to opt in to this kind of independent economy where we all do a few different things and a few different projects in a few different ways. The dominant fabric of the workforce will look a bit more like that. It doesn't mean that it didn't come with a lot of challenges and questions. What does that mean for Social Security and health benefits for people who have their healthcare attached to a full-time job? All of those things are design spaces right now and questions that leaders need to be answering. And unfortunately, it seems like it's been crickets for a long time in that department. But yes, I think jobs will be impacted. How much, how quickly, no one can say for sure. But we will see a different economy on the other side of this.
Do you think we're moving into a future, and this is just coming to me, where we're finally able to really tune into what drives us, like the gifts and talents we were brought to this earth with, that actually just feels easy, right? It's like, I'm good at this thing. I love doing this thing. Like to your point earlier, I would have done it even if I wasn't paid for it. And because we no longer have to learn all these like dreadful skills and doing all this stuff that we go to school for years to do. I mean, I remember going to college and this one math professor, we weren't even allowed to use calculators. He's like, you need to learn how to do this on your own. And I'm like, when am I ever going to use this, equation, whatever in life? And I haven't, right? So as we remove that, we can come back to our true skills and be recognized for and paid for the things that we love doing. And if that is the future we're looking at, imagine what that can unlock with us in terms of health and happiness and presence and well-being. And in a way, an unforeseen way almost, like the energy that comes from that permeates from even the rooted family systems or communities, when we can show up in our communities in a way that actually really brings us joy and get paid and validated and valued for that. Maybe that's what AI is really unlocking.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely going to be a lot of openings and reckonings in interesting ways. I mean, we spent the last 100 years coupling our identity to the job that we do. No matter how you look at it, that was probably never going to end well. That's always going to create some internal gaps, some sense of never enoughness, because you aren't that title. Because that title can just exist irrespective of you. Who are you behind that title? And sometimes it becomes not an excuse, but it becomes this distraction for substituting productivity for purpose in some way. And so I think the last 100 years we've really fallen into that trap. The challenges, I think, when technology creates this opening and it feels like it's not on your terms. So I think it has always been good to start questioning, why are we so focused on a job title? Why, when kids are 2, we condition them to think about their future in terms of what they're going to do, not who are they going to be. That was always a problem. But when the transition feels like some of it's out of your control, when there's big questions around income security, then I understand the fear with it. But it's also, when you look back on history too, labor and work has been a part of our history for many, many centuries, but jobs are a relatively new invention. Jobs came post-industrial revolution, right? So mechanized labor allowed for speciality. So now you are a specialist on this one part of the machine. Before, you just did general labor, or you maybe did something artisanal. You were a baker, you were the craftsperson. But other than that, we didn't really have jobs. So technology pushed in or ushered in this century of, I become this thing. And I build my entire identity around this in my life. And so if technology brought that in, can it maybe take it out when that technology changes? And that's what we're starting to see.
Wow. As we navigate that, what would you say is like the most important skill we can harness right now?
I would say the skill of judgment. This is a skill that even my professors, who still I'd say are mentors in my life, drive home over and over and over again. We're moving towards a future where right now you direct a computer, right? You write your slides on your computer, you edit the podcast on the computer. you're going to be directing computers that talk back and do the action on your behalf. So now that you'll have a supercomputer at your fingertips, what are you going to ask it? Is that the right question to even frame for an AI system? Do you have the judgment to evaluate its result? So I think judgment is a really important skill to cultivate. And you could bucket aspects of critical thinking within judgment, but I would say judgment is probably the most important discernment. And maybe a second one is communication becomes really important. So not only how well do you articulate the problems and the things that you want to ask these supercomputers, but then how well do you communicate that back to a team? Can you explain your reasoning? So I think those skills become really important. And probably your ability to work with people. If these AI agents are going to become more part of our workflows, which they will, choosing to work with a person, it's not that you're going to be up against AI because we'll be doing different things and humans will fill different roles, but I'm going to choose my team now, especially in this era where people are more working for themselves, more entrepreneurial, more independent. A lot of it will come down to if I actually want to work with you. So I think building the things that make us feel good to be around, that you can communicate well to people, I think those skills are also really important.
It's like not wasting our energies in the wrong places either, right? Being extremely just present. I think for me, presence really keeps coming back to me, the one we can just be present in each moment and not just always getting caught up in a hamster wheel, taking a step back, like trusting that, you know, things are emerging around us and it's okay for it to feel uncomfortable and scary because that's just the human nature in us, right? But to your point, we can get better at predicting the future and then taking those like conscious yet like neutral steps into it. And to sort of, for me, when I think about like what's the skill I want to harness, and it keeps coming back to change, it's like if we can get better at just seeing, accepting, embracing change in a way that feels grounded so we don't get swept away by it.
And I think, and I'm not opposed, I think fear can play a really good role, and skepticism, especially in technology development. I think without fear, you can have blind optimism. And we do see that in the tech industry. This is just going to work out. This is just, we have to build this thing and it's all going to be amazing and everyone's going to be thriving, alive, and well on the other side of that. And that could be true, but it's also what are the incentives behind that person saying it? And it's like, oh, wait, well, you also have $1 trillion company that you're trying to optimize for. This is getting strange. I see why you're going full speed ahead to this future. So I think fear can force us to ask questions. Fear can force us to confront gaps in our thinking, such as who's getting left behind, whose dream are we really building, or who do we think we're building on behalf of without actually including. So I think fear plays a good role. And somewhere between fear and optimism, I think there's this intersection of hope and agency. And I think that's where the important things, the guided things, the intentional things get built.
And it applies to our personal lives, right? Like, okay, I have this amazing new tool that I can use that I don't have to spend an hour drafting this email. I mean, I'm just speaking like, I know my husband spent that time. I don't spend an hour. I mean, some people do, right?
Sure.
So, or even like, let's take podcasting. What are the key highlights from this podcast? Like, give them to me. I don't have to sit and search it, the entire episode by myself. Like, it frees up time and productivity as a mom, right? I work around my children's nap schedules and get up in the early mornings and work. And I want to get to the task and get it done quickly so that then I can get up and make breakfast and be fully present for my children's lives, right?
Give your time back to yourself.
Right, you get the time back. And so I think it applies also to like, okay, it is an amazing tool. I can be conscious in terms of like, I don't have to use it all the time because I don't want to give my life away to this thing, right? Like, it's easy to be like, oh, that's an amazing, give me more, give me more, give me more. And then we still spend an hour and have got nothing done. So like being intentional with how much it takes and recognizing that like it can free up time in a way that's quite magical if I'm being conscious about it. And like, I am afraid of it taking over because I don't want it to. And I don't want it to take away my own intelligence and ability to think smartly and, you know, critically about things. Like, I want to keep that. In fact, I want it to help me get better at those things, right? Strengthen it.
Yeah, you want AI to be a scalpel in how you approach the world, how you approach the problems or things that you're working on. Yes, if it can free up time so you can use that time in ways that are important to you. Maybe that's being able to then drive the kids to school. Maybe that's being able to study for an exam. Whatever it is, if you can leverage the technology in a way that strengthens, it offers a springboard. But also know, yeah, you don't want to end up in a world where you've offloaded everything to this technology, because that's how some of it is being designed. And there's little things that you can do to recognize that. I shared a clip recently about this. If you chat with an AI system, you're going to notice that it always or mostly ends its response with another question, or it offers to help you with something else. And that is to keep you engaged in that conversation, taking up more of your time and your attention. We've seen this story before with social media, keeping you scrolling. Sometimes it's to show you, it will eventually be to show you ads on some AI platforms. Others, it's just going to be so the AI can get to know you better, and it will work better for you, but then it's also going to keep you in that habit of streaming everything through AI and not actually thinking for yourself. So you want to make sure you are driving that relationship. You have agency in how you're using this technology. And the same as goes to for social media. Are you lying in bed at 11 p.m. scrolling into the upside down? Or are you going on social media with an intention? This is what I'm trying to understand today. This is what I'm looking for. And then you log off and you don't need it. So all of those things that we have to be conscious for. And then, of course, industry has a lot to answer for here, because I think for the last few decades, they've been pushing us towards this frictionless society where everything is automated on our behalves. Everything is one click away. A boyfriend, a Uber car, a hotel to stay in. Everything is just a click away and requires less and less of our attention. I think we need to start to push back on that idea, insert cognitive friction back in. But yes, as long as you always want to be in the driving seat of technology, always, 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 because you can also be the product. And so once you're aware of that, you hopefully can bring that into your engagement with it. And so, yeah, leverage technology as a springboard for your life, not for somebody else's, profit statement.
Stay connected to your agency. Yeah. Again, back to neutral, but, conscious over the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You did mention it, so I'm going to bring it up real quick. You've said that you think AI is going to take away social media.
So, yeah, I do think we're at the beginning of the end of the social media era. And this will be a long transition. This isn't we wake up in 60 days and Instagram is in a vintage store somewhere. But and there's many reasons why. So the first reason is the actual product of what we are scrolling past and thinking about doing on the technology or on a social media platform. That changes. The more AI comes on these platforms, it changes the incentive for people to post. If I don't know if it's a bunch of AI bots watching me or an actual person watching me, am I going to still show up to signal, I don't know, that you are single or you're employable or all of the things people use social media for, that you've got a promotion, whatever it is. If you're just presenting that for a bunch of large language models, that incentive gets eroded. And the same is, in the comment section, if most of social media starts to get dominated by AI, it changes the incentive to go on the platform. Right. But then you also have these new capabilities coming, the rise of voice. So we always seek the lowest energy state as a species. So am I going to take out my phone and text to an AI system, or am I just going to talk to it if that's an option? So as AI gets better and more reliable with voice, I'm going to just start to issue it commands. And I'm not even going to take out a phone. I'm going to put in my AirPods or whichever Beats or whatever it is that you're using, and I'm just going to ask the AI to do that thing on my behalf. That also comes in and breaks that habit of taking out a phone, scrolling as you're waiting for a car or as you're waiting to do something. So then that's fewer eyeballs on the platform. And then the final kind of holy grail of I guess, the thesis would be AI is a general purpose technology. And all of these technologies lead to new ways to communicate and new ways to entertain. So if you look at the rise of radio and television and all of these general purpose technologies, the internet leading to YouTube and what we have today, we're on the cusp of another one of those moments. And so general purpose technologies, we don't automate ourselves in a new future. We do different things in that future. So social media will be a chapter of human history. Newspapers are still there. My parents still get it, but I don't subscribe to a newspaper. So we're on the end of that era, and something else will be coming. And it's hard to see, but it will happen.
The futurist has spoken. Someone is like, I'm so done with social media. And they might be like, you know, dancing in the car right now. And I mean, we all have those moments. And actually, the use of social media has been on decline since 2022, which is like the first down since I think it
by
came
younger
about.
demographics too, which is important.
And I guess, I mean, we're just craving something different too.
We're so ready for what's next.
Yeah.
And I think, and this isn't just because of social media, but the entire attention economy that we live in right now, where everything is competing for our attention. Streaming platforms, they've said it openly, they're competing for our sleep. We have, you know, apps always notifying us, you have this request, did you see this news story? We're constantly being bombarded as if we live in a slot machine. Even dating apps are all designed around that same thing. There's always more to see, more to stream, another option. And I think we've been entirely taxed by that we are all ready for, and it doesn't even have to be something coming next. We're all ready just for an alternative, just to unsubscribe and have some moments that are not being marketed, curated, optimized, and sold. And I think that's what we're all feeling.
Yeah. As a mom, I have days when I'm like, oh, maybe tonight when the kids are in bed, I can watch like half a show, like even just half an episode. And lo and behold, that's the one day that Eloise took a nap in school, so she's not falling asleep until like 9:30. And by the time she's down, I'm like wiped out. And, you know, I miss, you know, being in that like constant, you know, having a good show. And so I'm not saying that's all bad, but I will say my life has never felt richer. It is so simple right now. It's routines. I wake up, I have my first cup of coffee. I always have my first sip outside. You know, as a mom of young kids, it's just routines. Like that's literally how you get through the day. And it feels so rich because it's forced me to be so present in the moments and show up big for those small moments, because I don't have the fancy lifestyle right now. We live in the countryside and like we get what we get. And it's beautiful. And so I have like the firsthand like feeling and like vision of that. Not to say that the world we created is also amazing, but I see a point where like we're a little bit saturated in
We're
like
saturated.
the constant.
I have, there was a term I heard, I can't remember who said it, I think it was an economist, that we've built for some areas of the world that are very privileged, we've actually live in an overproduced society. And so I think we realize, wow, we are oversaturated with all of this. We've overdone it. Every single moment of our life, there's something competing for us in it. And something that's so simple as setting your phone on Do Not Disturb feels so freeing. And then you realize, okay, we didn't necessarily need all that. And I think we do that as a society, right? We build things, we overdo it, we overcorrect, and then we come back somewhere in the middle. And I think that's what we're feeling with this attention economy, this digital era that we're in.
I love it. Wow. Well, you're the ultimate hate changer. You're a futurist. You're always on the cusp of like what's possible next. You're in my eyes an optimist and a grounded and informed one. I'm so curious to learn what people do. How do you stay connected to your inner optimist? What are some daily practices, routines, maybe boundary settings that you do to stay connected to your curiosity, to make sure that you show up your fullest human? Like, what are some like the juicy insights of the Sinead Bovell life?
What are the juicy insights? I have very strict boundaries with technology and with how I spend my time. So there's no social media unless there's some really specific reason why I need to be on it. No social media past 7 p.m. at all. My phone is always on Do Not Disturb. So I don't get any notifications about anything. I have a few people that can call through. They're on favorites list. So if they need to reach me, they can. But otherwise, I have to seek out information. It can't seek me. My phone is never the first thing I look at in the morning at all, except for to put on a meditation or to put on something that I'm listening to in that way. That's very intentional, but it's still on airplane mode, and I've downloaded the meditation ahead of time. That's really important to me. Anywhere where I think it's kind of an unnatural environment to be in, aka social media, we weren't meant to be exposed to millions of people at once. I always ask myself if I need to be there before I go on it. That's another thing. I do watch some stuff, like I'll stream some shows if people are watching them, or if I'm back home in Canada with my family, we like to watch things, but I don't have a TV. So I don't spend a lot of time doing that, but some stuff is amazing. I mean, what am I watching right now? I'm finally coming on board with Shrinking, which I'm loving. I just watched Hijack, which I'm also loving. So I do watch things, but again, it's kind of intentional. I have to seek it out. It's not something that is just ambient. I spend a lot of time outside. I'd say half of the things that I'm listening to are to do with mind and spirituality and understanding thinking, and then the things of my work. I'd say it's also really important. I take care of my body as much as I can, which I know is a privilege. Spend a lot of time with friends and family as much as possible, and be as present as possible. And I know it's funny because I study the future for a living, and I know how quickly things can change, and that makes me so appreciative and so tuned in to the moments that we are in. So I'd say those are some of the things that I do in my life.
Thank you. And if any good shows you're watching, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing, send it my way.
I will.
Because the thing too is I'm like, oh gosh, I need to first sit down and like find something.
Oh,
like by the time I find something, I'm like,
paradox
I'm so
of
tired.
choice. We don't want all these choices. We just want better choices.
Tell me what to watch and I'll watch it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on again. This has been so much fun. And I'm going to wrap here in a second with one final question. But before we do, there's so many places to find you. You're very active on social media. You have your own podcast, I've Got Questions with Sinead Bovell. You have a Substack. I will link all of this in the show notes. Anything I'm missing? Where should people go?
Thank you. No, yeah. So any of the platforms, my name's probably on there somewhere. The show for sure. I talk about all this stuff on the show.
And you nerd out and go deep.
I nerd all the way out. But yes, if you prefer to read, I also write. So yeah, all of the different platforms.
Check it out right now. Sinead is the person to follow in the AI world as we navigate uncertainty and possibilities of change. Okay, so my final question is inspired by one of my all-time favorite quotes. It's by Mary Oliver, and it goes, "Keep some room in your heart for the unimaginable." And if you were to tune into the promises of that quote, what future are we looking at?
That is unimaginable in the best way? That's a really great question. What becomes unimaginable? I don't want it to be a scary sign that I'm taking too long to think about it.
No, it's a good sign.
I think it's because there's so many ways that this technology could go. I mean, we're on the cusp of an era where we stream supercomputers the way we stream the internet. So what becomes possible when so many people with different ideas and different voices now have access to something that they can create with? I think we're on the cusp of a world that can look so different in such incredible ways that I can't wait to see the extraordinary things that get invented, and not just things that are an extension of what we do, but entirely new ways of living. I'd say one thing that really excites me, and AI intersects with this, is the bioeconomy. So we're finally ending this chemical era where everything is built on chemicals, and we're stepping into the biological era. So we'll have microbes create, synthetic plastics versus the plastics that we use today. All of the products that we put on our body, instead of them being made out of really strange chemicals, they're made out of things that are found in the natural world but not taken from it, grown in a lab, but mimicking what evolution already gave us. So what that looks like when we step into a world where we are growing buildings, not slapping concrete on them, and growing clothing, that to me is really interesting. And I think what's so funny with technology, the more advanced our society becomes, the more we actually realize we already had what we needed, and we designed back to it. There's this quote that I love by a scientist, that the future is ancient. And I think in many ways we are heading towards that. And that to me is really inspiring.
I just got goosebumps, chills. Thank you, Sinead. Thank you so much for that vision, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks for having me.